Hello, how are you? I hope that you're fine. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ongeri Modoni. In case you're new, please do consider subscribing because this is the only place where you never get out the same because we are all about helping you connect to yourself, connect to your destiny, and most importantly, connect to your creator. Today, we're going to talk about the wilderness. Yes, you're going to talk about the wilderness and you're going to talk about God's school because the wilderness is part of God's school. Okay, so what is God's school? When God calls you to a specific purpose, to a specific ministry, there's something called God's school. Because let's say, for example, you want to be a teacher. This you have to go through a course that will teach you to be a teacher. In the same way, in the spirituality, God takes you through a school to teach you how to be what He wants you to be. Are we together? Just the same way there is the hospitality school or school of hospitality, there's a school of education, school of whatever, medicine or every other school. That's the same way with the spiritual realm. There is different ministries. You may have the same ministry, but the calling is different. So God takes us to His school so that we can learn to be what He has called us to be. And in the school, we have the wilderness. The wilderness is a point where God puts you so that He can reform you and make you what He wants you to be. In the wilderness, He removes every other source of support or support system in your life and make you dependent on Him alone. He releases you into the wilderness that is filled with scorpions, snakes. There's no water, there is no food, but you have to survive. One rule of the wilderness, you won't die. So you have to survive under whatever condition you have to survive. Why does God put you into the wilderness? One, is to first deal with your unbelief, because when you actually before you realize the ministry or the calling that God had for you, you were a different person. You didn't know how it is to struggle or maybe to go an extra mile or do things in a way that you really don't depend on the forces that are around you. So the first thing that God deals with is your unbelief. So He trains you to believe in Him. In the wilderness, God removes every other support system so that you can learn to depend on Him. In the wilderness, God builds you spiritually. You start with drinking milk, step by step, milk and bread. By the time you're out of the wilderness, God expects you to eat the hard food. So the wilderness is a place of growth. Are you together? And it is part of God's school. So how long you spend in the wilderness is dependent on you. How much are you willing to learn? And how fast do you learn? How resistant are you to the challenges that you go through in the wilderness? You can stay shorter in the wilderness or you can stay longer in the wilderness depending on you. How fast do you learn? Or what, it also depends with the calling that God is calling you for, because the higher the calling, the more the challenges you face in the wilderness and the more the battles you fight. So now we are out of the wilderness. So the wilderness is part of the first stage of God's school. When you get out of the wilderness, you start, like, let's say that you have, it's like the primary school and now you're going to the high school. So God's school, the first thing is that now you have a firm foundation. When you're out of the wilderness, now the first thing is that you have a firm foundation. You trust in God, you know how to rely on God. Your faith is growing and all that. Now you go to God's school. Now the first thing that God does is to identify to you what is exactly your calling. Are you a preacher, a motivational speaker? Are you a singer? Are you this? Are you this or this or this or this or this? So the first thing that he does is he identifies to you what it is that you have been called to you to do. And now he starts training you towards that. Are you together? So he starts training you towards what he has called you to be. Okay? So you start learning and you start being molded towards what God wants you to be. It's not easy, but God is ever there with you. Sometimes he steps away. Yes, he does. Sometimes he steps away, not really that he has left you, but to see how much you have learned. Remember, the teacher is always silent during the test. So that means that in God's school, there are examinations that you do. And the examinations that you do determine if you will go to the next step or not. So if God promised something to you, like a ministry, before you get there, you have to first go through Form 1, pass Form 1, go to Form 2, pass Form 2, go to Form 3, pass Form 3, go to Form 4. You cannot skip a class. You cannot skip a class. So it is very important to understand what is it that God wants me to learn. This is a call that God is calling me into. What is the requirement of this call? Because I, as a motivational speaker, God will not mold me the same way He molds somebody who is called to apostolic ministry or evangelism. Our training will be different. So it is very important to understand what is it that God is calling you to. So when you understand that, He will give you different tests. And you have to be alert to understand, I have this test and I have to pass it. And that is why I said in the last video that I posted, sometimes as much as God promised you and He said, I'll do it swiftly, the swiftly thing can also be dependent on you. Because if God is telling you, you know what, I want you to be this way, but you want to be this way, so that will somehow delay the fulfillment of His promise to you. So it is very important that when you're in God's school, you be alert. Be alert, listen, pray more, connect yourself to God more. In most cases, let me say this, when you're in God's school, God tends to isolate you. Most people go through a period called isolation. And isolation is where God removes the support system. Just the same way in the wilderness. God removes the support system so that you can align yourself in the line that He is aligning you into. And that is when He starts connecting you with people who are in the same lane. That way, you can be going in the similar direction. So what is it that God is calling you into? Maybe you have not yet identified what it is, even your purpose. You don't even know if you have a calling. Maybe you are watching this video and maybe you have not even received your calling. And this video maybe just a preparation for the call. So whatever it is, whichever stage you are, thank you so much for watching. And I do hope that you can go through the wilderness strong. Come out of the wilderness, go into God's school, which also the wilderness is God's school, but advanced God's school, that is the high school bit, go through it, pass, and get into the ministry that God is calling you into. It's never easy, but you got to push. You have to keep pushing. You have to keep pushing. You have to keep pushing. And remember one thing I also said in the last video, that the worst tragedy of your life and my life is looking back and wishing we did not give up. And the best thing that will ever happen to you is looking back at today and saying, hugging yourself, appreciating yourself for not giving up in today. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you have learned something and God has opened your mind to more revelation. So please make sure that you subscribe to this channel for more inspirational videos and videos that will uplift your soul and your spirit all the same. Thank you so much for watching. In case you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you can get update of every video that I post. My name is Ongedi Modoni. Till next time, bye.